Dear colleagues and friends, I'm really happy today to be standing here for two reasons. One of the reasons is that you're here. So far I've been the representative of Hungary in the European Commission's working group on teacher policy and also in UNTAP, and I've had many occasions to meet with many of you on these European meetings, and this has been a great pleasure, and I've always dreamt of and planned to have a Hungarian meeting, to have a PLA or some sort of activity in Hungary, because I thought it was very important to bring all the knowledge and all the values that exist on the European platform about teacher policy, bring them to Hungary and have discussions about them, because I think it's very useful for Hungarian teacher educators and professionals to know about them, to discuss them and to learn from them. So we would share and we would mutually develop from these. And actually, because of budgetary reasons, in the last 5 years, I was not able to bring any PLAs or any activities into Hungary. So through the EDiTE project and the good organization skills of ELTE, Eötvös Loránd University, I'm really happy to have here all the experts that count, who are really great and whom I respect very much here today. And I really hope that for the Hungarian participants it's going to be a nice and good journey. At the same time, I'm also happy because I had the opportunity to be able to present the Hungarian situation, which is, I think, I could use Francesca's term. We are in troubled waters now. Or I could say that so far we've heard a lot about theory, what is going on and what should be going on within teacher policy in a country. And let's look at an example how it is on the ground, how it happens really in one of the European member states, namely in Hungary, since this whole forum is taking place in Hungary. So I'll try to give an overview of the most important topics within teacher policy in Hungary. So I would start with initial teacher education issues, since I think most of the attention in Hungary at the moment is on initial teacher education, how we should do it, how we should not do it, and there's an enormous amount of debate around it. And I'm sure if I weren't be the one today presenting, then you would probably get a very different point of view on initial teacher education in Hungary, because amongst us we have very different opinions. But I try to be as objective as I can. And then I would turn to induction, which is a phase that we hardly use in Hungary. We use instead of that probational status, and I'll talk about that later. And then I'll finish with the third phase of the continuum, the continuous professional development, which is also a term that is very much not used in Hungary. It's we can translate it, but it sounds really artificial. We rather use the term in service, which is in-service training, which is not the same, we all know, but that's the term we use usually. So I'll be talking about that and our traditions and our recent steps within in-service training or continuous professional development. And I also thought, because underlying all the phases of teacher education, there are teacher educators. I thought it was very important to talk about teacher educators and what we have as values in Hungary regarding teacher educators and what we have as challenges. So this would be my menu for the last presentation. I really hope it's not going to be boring, because it's hard to be the fourth. Okay, so let's start with initial teacher education in Hungary. I cannot stay at present situation and give you a description without going back a little bit and explain to you a little bit about the Hungarian traditions. Our traditional higher education system was a divided system. We used to have colleges and universities. Colleges were giving college degrees and universities were offering university degrees. This was exactly the same in teacher education. So we had college degrees in teacher education and teaching college degrees and university teaching degrees. These were not only different in terms of length. One of them, the college degree, was 4 years long and the university degree was 5 years long. The difference wasn't only in length, but the difference, very important difference, was in the rights a person obtained by getting qualification either in a college or at a university. A college degree was a qualification that provided the teacher with the right to teach in a primary school. I will talk about what a primary school is in Hungary. It comprises of the normal primary, ISKED 1, and of lower secondary, so the first 8 years of the schooling. And the university teacher degree, which was 5 years long, it gave the right to the teacher to teach in a high school or a gymnasium, which was the last 4 years of public education. In the 1990s, there was a big reform in Hungary, and at the end of this reform, the pedagogical, psychological module of the college and the university degree was merged, so they were identical. So the two degrees differed in the matter of the disciplinary studies, how much depth the teachers gained on disciplinary matters. This common pedagogical and psychological module was 600 hours long. It included 15 hours of teaching practice when the teacher actually went to the classroom and gave courses. And it introduced, it was in the 1990s though, so quite a long time ago, it introduced first time the teacher qualifying exam, which was a very positive and big step forward at the time. This traditional way of educating teachers was in place until 2009. Ever since, and even before, we had a very strong demand from the school system to keep our teachers too subject-oriented. I know that in many European countries there are other systems. In the Scandinavian countries, I mean, in many places you find teachers with 3 subject orientation, or in other countries with just 1. Hungary has kept to 2 subject orientations, and I think that's a good tradition. As I said, this college degree and university degree system, dual system, made a very, very strong impression, and it had a very strong imprint on the Hungarian teacher education system. This was abolished in 2009 because of the changes in the school system, basically. For many other reasons, also because of the Bologna process, but in the Bologna process we could have made many kinds of teacher education programs, but there were some challenges in the school system that had to be met. One of the challenges was that after 1989, the change of the fall of the socialism, the schools were liberated. So the 8+4 type of school system, public school system, was liberated, and there were new schools. Some of the gymnasiums became 6 years long, and then came the even newer schools that were 8 years long as gymnasiums. So it divided the public or the school 12 years of school studies at different phases. So at the beginning there was a very, very clear employment base, gymnasiums with university degree, primary schools with the college degree, but how do you deal with the lower or upper secondary studies in those schools that were 8-year-long gymnasiums or 6-year-long gymnasiums? How do you educate the teachers that are in the in-between? They work in an institution that's called a high school, that's called a gymnasium, but at the same time they're teaching the children who are under 14. Should they have a college degree? Should they have a university degree? And it also brought up not only the question of what kind of degree, but what kind of knowledge, what kind of competencies, what kind of attitudes do they need? Is there really a great barrier between teaching 14-year-olds and teaching 15-year-olds, or teaching 12-year-olds to teaching 13-year-olds? Do we really need a different set of competencies for teaching different age group children? And this was a very important question at the time. Also, at the time, the secondary school system expanded, so there was a huge demand on higher level or more equipped teachers. So it all led to the Bologna reform that came about in 2009 in Hungary, that came to life before, so the ministerial decrees were created before, but we started implementing it in 2009. So when the Bologna system of teacher education was introduced in Hungary, they decided that there would be one type of a teacher. This teacher should acquire a master's degree, and this teacher could teach either in primary school or in a gymnasium or high school. It doesn't matter, and the age group doesn't matter either. It's just the basic concept was that there is a teaching profession and it's one teaching degree. And structurally how it was introduced or how it was figured out was in a way that there wouldn't be a bachelor degree that provides a teaching degree. All bachelor degrees would be on a disciplinary subject. And because Hungarian teachers should have a two-subject base or a two-subject orientation, we made the disciplinary bachelor degrees in a way that a teacher could have a major and a minor. So the disciplinary bachelors included a major part of a study and a minor disciplinary study also. And built on that, the person who wanted to become a teacher could pick the teacher master degree, which was two-subject oriented, and it included a whole one semester long school practice at the end. So the end of the program became a whole semester in a school, which was very much appreciated, I think, by everyone in the country, and all the people who debated about this reform accepted that the school practice, lengthening the school practice and having a longer period in a school where the teacher does not only experience giving a class, but also experiences all kinds of activities that a teacher has to do, meeting with parents, taking children to excursions, all kinds of complex tasks. This was firstly introduced by this Bologna process, Bologna type of initial teacher education. Also, one of the elements that was quite revolutionary at the time was the portfolio. We introduced the portfolio as a means of assessment, as a means of self-development throughout the teacher education master and throughout the school practice in 2009. So that you would understand probably a bit better about the structural part of how this was built up, I show you this image of the bachelor's degree. Most of the bachelor's degrees in disciplinary studies are 180 credits. 120 of that went to the major, 50 credit went to the minor, and there was 10 credits optional that a student could take from pedagogy and psychology as founding the teacher professional studies at master level. Built on that, they could choose the teacher's master, which offered 40 credits from the first subject, 40 credits from the second subject, 40 credits from pedagogy and psychology, and 30 credits of in-school practice. Probably that's not the most interesting thing for you, and I think probably within the European context, the structural elements are not that interesting as the content elements. And that's where a new set of thoughts came in also. The Bologna process, the result of the Bologna process in teacher education in Hungary was also the time when we created the competences of teachers. There was debate, and at the end, Hungary accepted 9 competences, 9 basic competences for teachers at the qualifying phase. So these 9 competences that are listed on the slide have been agreed by Hungarian teacher educators as the requirements that we expect a newly qualified teacher to have. Of course, I really abbreviated them just to give you an overview of what the Hungarian competency list consists of, but these have a more detailed, more described description, and these are set in a ministerial decree. And then what happened? After this reform, as I said, it was launched in 2009. There was this very strong opposition amongst some of the teacher educators about this reform, and there was a very strong drawback of number of students. I should have probably said at the time when I talked about the traditional teacher education form in Hungary that we used to educate all humanities students and a lot of science students to teacher degrees. It was an optional thing. They took a humanities program, and if they wanted, they could also do the teacher's degree. And also, and of course, as a result of that, most of the students took teacher program, just in case. You never know what happens in life, and you might need your teacher degree as well. So we ended up educating tons of students to teaching degree, and out of them, a little amount was really, really interested and motivated to become a teacher. While with the Bologna, as a result of the Bologna reform, we put the teacher education program at a master level, and this was a choice for the student. They finished their bachelor's degree, and they had to choose, do I make a physics master or do I become a physics teacher? I had to make a choice between the two. So most of the students, because I think, that's my personal view, and I know some people might not agree with me in the room, most of the students, because teaching was not a very well accepted, and it is still not a very highly prestiged profession in Hungary, did not choose to become teachers. We have very little amount of students. At the time, we had very small amount of enrollment into teaching master degree because it was risky. Either they became a teacher or nothing else. So, as a result of the drawback in the numbers, and also because of the huge debate between teacher educators on teacher educational issues, at 2013 we had a new change. We introduced a new teacher education system. We introduced the unified master degree, which means it is kind of like the university degree that we used to have. It's a degree that you enter when you're 18, when you get your bachelor's and the baccalaureate, the final leaving exam from high school, and you stay there for 5 or 6 years, and at the end you become a two-subject-oriented teacher. So in some ways it reminds a lot of us to the university degrees and college degrees, and it reminds us to that because there are two versions of it. One of them is 5 years long and the other one is 6 years long, and the 5 years long only allows you to teach in lower secondary, and the 6 years long only allows you to teach in upper secondary. So there's again a distinction between teacher and teacher, and there's again a distinction between teaching age groups. Though the pedagogical, psychological content of the two are the same. These students are sitting in the same classroom. We've launched this program September 2013, and we have a lot of students enrolled in that. There's a very big supporting scheme for this unified teacher education program. So student gets a scholarship from the state. They pay them quite a nice amount of money, so we have a lot of applicants, and this is good in this sense that we have more applicants, and hopefully we'll end up with more teachers in 5 or 6 years. This unified master degree ends with a 1-year-long practice, in school practice. So the Bologna system's in-school practice of a half year has been lengthened, doubled actually, into a whole year's school practice. And I've checked the set of competencies that the new ministerial decree describes, and they are pretty much the same, so I didn't really make a list again on the slide about the competence lists, because it seems to me, though they are reworded and not worded exactly the samely, but they remain the same. So actually I think there is a consensus about the teacher competencies. There's no consensus whatever on the structure, how we should be doing that. And since I knew that this was a very interesting topic, and for that, and I was the responsible person of teacher education in the ministry at the time. In 2010, I launched my PhD studies and made a research, a European comparison about teacher education programs, teacher education pathways, I'd call them, paths, which means that when a student finishes high school studies, and between finishing high school studies and obtaining a teacher qualification, whatever the educational road is, how many ever programs one has to take, that would be one path. I gathered a lot of information from 26 European countries and gathered 186 different paths from European countries and compared them on their average and clustered them. As you can see, the results, I've found 48 paths to primary school. Most of them are bachelor level. The Hungarian is also. The average length in Europe is 4.2 years. This means 253 credits. The Hungarian is 4 years long and 240 credits, so that would go along with the lines of the European average. And has 30 credits, 31 credits of ECTS practice on the average in Europe. It pretty much goes along the lines of the Hungarian primary teacher education program. As you can see, for ISCAD 1 within Europe, the credits allocated for subject matter or the general method that would be teaching subject at the end is 139 credits, while everything else, including in-school practice, so everything else that prepares for the professional work of a teacher would be 114 credits, which is pretty much in balance with the subject matter. For lower secondary in Europe, I've checked 75 paths from these 26 countries. The major and the way beyond the most typical, the dominant structure became bachelor plus masters. There were hardly any unified degrees or college degrees left. The dominant structure became bachelors plus masters. The average length for these courses was 4.7 years, and the school practice went down from the average of 31 to 26, while the subject matter content went up to 177, which is comprehensible, and altogether, all the credits allocated for pedagogical preparation or teaching preparation, professional preparation, lessened to 106. If we look at the upper secondary European average, we can see about the same as the lower secondary, except that the subject matter credits have been raised and they become quite double compared to the professional preparation. And we can also see that from moving from ISCAD 1 to ISCAD 2 and from ISCAD 2 to ISCAD 3, the courses become about a semester longer. Now, if we compare that, this average of Europe to the Hungarian Bologna type initial teacher education, which was a bachelor plus masters, it was 5.5 years long. It required 330 credits. It offered 30 credits for in-school practice, and it offered 94 credits for professional preparation and 236 for subject matter, disciplinary preparation. We can see that if we say that this program was not good or not up to standard according to the European average, then this was at the field of professional preparation, pedagogical and psychological preparation. Though within the Hungarian debate, this is exactly the contrary, and the arguments were about not giving enough credits to subject matters. So our new unified master degree has become 5 or 6 years long. I put the 6-year-long one in here, which is 360 credits. We allocated 60 credits to in-school practice, and we haven't raised the professional preparation, because within the 100 credits, you have the 60 credits of in-school practice. So all you get altogether in 6 years for a teacher's preparation is 40 credits of pedagogical, psychological, methodological, and all kinds of preparation, and 260 credits to subject matter, which is, I think, unbalanced, but that's just my point of view. So that was all about initial teacher education in Hungary. Now we can move on to induction. As I said at the beginning, induction is not really a term that we use in Hungary. The translation would be in Hungarian bevezetés. We don't really use that. Instead of that, the Hungarian terminology uses rather a probational status. This is not linked that much to the educational side of teaching, so this has not become an educational government decree or an educational ministerial decree. This has been approached from the civil servant status and the employment point of view. The country has realized that newly qualified teachers are very fragile and they tend to leave the profession, so it's important to protect them and it's important to give them support. So there became a government decree, actually I put law there, but it's not a law, it's a government decree, that obliged schools to give mentors to newly qualified teachers, provide them in mentors, and to keep them in a probational state for 2 years. This probational state, to be honest though, was rather an easy way out for the school head, so that they wouldn't have to make a not so good teacher into a civil servant for life if they were not good enough. So this was kind of approached at the beginning in 2007 from very much of an employment-based view. And why I think it's not an induction system is that it's not really systemic and it doesn't really give too much support. It was very much linked to the civil servant status, so it was not applied at the time for all teachers. It was only applied for the teachers in state schools. It didn't really provide a systemic kind of support for teachers because the regulation only said that you need to have a mentor. Okay, who's going to be the mentor? Who is assessing the mentors? Who's training the mentors? Who is monitoring the whole system for the mentors? These system-level requirements and the system-level mechanics were not put into the system at the time. Though this has changed in 2013, and we made a little step forward because we introduced a career scheme for teachers. And so in that way, I think the probational status having a very much employment orientation moved and kind of became part of the teacher career path, the teacher development continuum, though we still lack a little bit of system support to quality assurance and to system level development. At the 2013 regulations, according to 2013 regulations, the probationer status is taken, it has to be there until 2 years, and it can last the maximum 4 years. So every newly qualified teacher who is going in, getting an employment as a teacher will have to become a probationer. They will have to have a mentor who is supporting them. The school head is responsible of choosing and providing the mentor. And we've also introduced a new element which I think is very positive, the portfolio. So the portfolio that's been introduced in initial teacher education now has become the thread, the leading thread throughout the whole continuum, and now we can build on the portfolio. And at the end of the 2 years or at the end of the 4 years, there's an exam. There's a final exam, a qualifying exam, and the decision of the probationer is made based on the portfolio and based on class visits. So I think that's more or less a development. And also what we can say, and that's why we have the four years also, not only the 2 years, that actually a novice teacher can fail in this phase. I'm not sure anyone has ever failed in Hungary. But I don't know, I don't have any information on that, but theoretically they can fail, and if they fail at the end of the 2 years, then they have to redo their 2 years of a probational status, and that's why it's maximum 4. If they've redone their 2 years and they fail again, there's no more option for them, they have to leave the profession, which also shows or is a step toward quality assurance, I think. And then CPD as the third phase in Hungary. I think Hungary had a very very forward-looking and very good regulation in 1997. We were one of probably the first countries that, I don't really know, but I think it was very positive at the time. We've introduced obligatory CPD in 1997. All teachers have to do 120 hours of CPD in every 7 years. Though today this government decree has become kind of a burden because the world has turned a little bit during this time, and it showed up in many research papers, and I think Thomas has highlighted that now it's evident that it's not really the in-service training courses that are very effective in developing teachers or in teacher development, but it's rather the collaborative learning experiences of teachers within the school, not taking the teacher out of the school, but getting them collaborate within their school community, fighting their own school development plan projects and reaching their own aims would be more effective. So that's accepted as a theory, but today practice still remains that most of our CPD is done course-based. We have higher education courses offered for teachers, all kinds of teachers, and also we have private providers who give 30, 60, 120 hours courses for teachers. What I think is really good in the Hungarian system, though, is that these courses are accredited. There's an accreditation committee for the higher education courses and another one, accreditation procedure, which is quite strict for these short courses, and a not accredited course does not make part of these 120 hours. And also the new regulation that has just came out, which has modified a little bit the 97 government decree, makes it possible for schools to offer collaborative school development programs. So if a school launches a collaborative school development program and the teachers take part in that, then they can fulfill their 120 hours in that activity, or in knowledge sharing within schools, or in competence development in ICT or languages. So I think this strict way of thinking about courses and course-based CPD is diluting and is changing in Hungary, but to change the in-school culture, it will take time. We're not there yet. And then as a part of the CPD scheme, I think we have to mention the new teacher career scheme that's been introduced last year. I think it is very important because whatever is going to be in this teacher career scheme is going to shape the demands of the teachers on their professional development. Of course, they want to make more money. I don't know if you've read about the OECD comparisons and the EURDC comparisons about teacher salaries. Hungarian teacher salaries are the lowest in Europe. So, of course, it is very important for a Hungarian teacher to make more money and to advance on the career scheme, which is linked, which will be linked with higher salaries. So, whatever is going to be required of certain levels of the career scheme is going to shape the CPD needs of teachers, I think, in most ways. So we have the first phase is the probational phase that I've talked about. So I would skip that. As I said, it's obligatory, and it starts after reaching a teacher qualification, and it lasts for 2 or 4 years, and the assessment is done with a portfolio. After that, the teacher becomes a pedagogue 1. I didn't really know how to say that in English. Teacher 1, something like that. It's an obligatory status, so you can't skip this status. You have to enter into pedagogue 1. You can stay in this in this stage for 6 to 9 years, and you gather your portfolio. You have to use your portfolio and gather evidence of your development, and you can get yourself qualified, measured, assessed at a group, and then enter pedagogue 2, which is still an obligatory step. So if you are a teacher, you've done your 2 years probational status, and then let's say 9 years of pedagogue 1 status, and you don't succeed in reaching the standards of Pedagogue 2, then you have to also leave the profession. So these are the obligatory steps the teacher has to make in professional development. And then for the motivated ones and the excellent ones, there's the master pedagogue level, which is optional, so it's not obligatory. You have to have at least 40 years of practice in teaching for it, and you have to be at least for 6 years in the Pedagogue 2 stage, and you have to have a specialized higher education course for a master level pedagogue. Also, if you want to reach this stage, you are going to be assessed according to your portfolio. And then the highest status stage within the new Hungarian career scheme is the teacher researcher, which is based basically on a PhD. So that's when the EDiTE comes in, and I think the EDiTE is going to be very important in that sense. If you have taught in school for at least 14 years and you have a PhD, and you've been in the Pedagogue 2 stage at least, then you can make a self-assessed and become a teacher researcher. This is the highest prestige status within the teachers, but this is going to be a small number of teachers who can take part or who can become a teacher researcher, because the main objective is to have the PhD developed and the research stance developed within public education, within schools. What I think is important to mention at the time now, though it might change, because I think it's a brand new government decree and it's going to be debated and it's going to be amended many times. What I missed so far, to make it a real step within the continuum and make it into a tool of real development, is the competence requirements at each stage. If it's going to be competence-based, if every stage is going to be competence-based, then it's going to link initial education with probational status and the whole development. If we're going to lack the competences and we're going to just say degrees, courses, and years of study, then it's going to be input-based and it's going to be tick-boxed, and I don't really know what they are going to assess in a portfolio. So if we want to assess a portfolio, then we need concrete competence levels decided, or competences or profiles decided for each stage, and then it can become a real strong drive in teacher education or teacher development in Hungary. We'll see how this will develop later. And now I came to the last block of what I wanted to say, teacher educators. I think that in Hungary the term teacher educator is really widely used, and I know that that is a big thing in Europe, because in many countries the word didn't even exist before the European Commission and the OECD started working on teacher educators as a key group in educational systems. So this is a term that we widely use. It's known, it's accepted, though we often neglect that those professionals in higher education who teach disciplinary subjects, history major professor, or a physics major, chemistry major professor, they are also teacher educators. We often not think of them as such, and they themselves often not consider themselves as teacher educators. Also, we often forget that initial teacher education is a very short phase in a teacher's lifespan. The probational status is also, or induction phase is also a short cycle in the lifespan. And then CPD phase is very, very long. It's more decades. And all the CPD providers and all those who take part in educating teachers, developing them or supporting them in their development, they are also teacher educators. And I think when we speak about that in teacher educators in Hungary, we really not think about them. And those who do these jobs in Hungary really don't consider themselves, or often not consider themselves, teacher educators if they are working outside of higher education. So this is probably something that we would need to work on. But what is very good, and I'm really proud of that, is that we have the Hungarian Association of Teacher Educators, which is probably the oldest in Europe. We have in the room the president of that, Iván Falus. And this association had a long tradition of providing support for teacher educators, providing 2-3-day seminars called academies when values were shared, where there were heated discussions on issues, when system-level changes could be discussed and educational system-level issues could be discussed. I think that is very important, and that is something we should keep. At the same time as challenges, I didn't want to go into detail, but the other part of my PhD research study, the first part was about the European comparison of teacher education paths, but the second part was about the teacher educators' attitudes. I realized that according to the European level, our Hungarian Bologna-type teacher education program was okay. It was fine and it was within the European lines. And at the same time, I could feel that in Hungary there was heated debate, so I wanted to know why, what was behind the debate. And my research results showed that there's an attitude gap. There's a huge attitude gap between teacher educators in Hungary that belong to the pedagogical psychological side and then to the disciplinary side on what is good teaching, on what we consider good teaching. The disciplinary side tend to think about good teaching as efficient transmission of up-to-date knowledge, while the pedagogy and psychological side tend to think about good teaching as individualized support for learning. And these two concepts conflict within the program contents, within the credits, within the attitudes that the teacher educators give. And I think it is a problem when a student teacher is faced with different and conflicting teacher images during initial teacher education, and then up to the school that they will end up, they will decide which of the teacher image they will accept and will they live by later on. So I think there has to be something that Hungary does with discussing a lot about teacher roles and teacher quality before moving on to structural changes within initial teacher education, because that costs a lot of money, and I think the outcome is not going to change unless the attitudes of teacher educators change. Also, my research studies showed a very deep conflict in educational organizational terms. Who is the leader of teacher education? Where is the leadership? Where is the organizational location of the leadership of initial teacher education is? We have lots of departments and we have lots of faculties that take part in teacher education. The disciplinary professors are at the disciplinary faculties. Some of the methodologists are in the disciplinary faculties. Some of the methodologists are at the pedagogy psychology faculties, or some are at schools. And then where should be the leadership? Who is responsible for organizing it? Who is responsible for making sure that quality is there? Who is responsible for making sure that everything happens in order and everything goes toward one goal? At the moment in Hungary, there's a bit of hesitation in that, and I think we have to work on that. And thank you for your attention.